Hello everybody, my name is Harriet Muncaster and I'm the author and illustrator of Isadora Moon and Mirabelle. But today I'm here to talk to you about my new book, my new series called Victoria's Stitch, Bad and Glittering, and this is my first book for older readers. Now this book is all about twin sisters, Victoria Stitch and Celestine, who have been denied their royal birthright. They are both whisklings, and whisklings are tiny creatures no taller than 5 inches high, and they're born from crystals. Now, if a whiskling is born from a diamond, that means that they are a royal, and Victoria Stitch and Celestine are born from a diamond. But their diamond has a dark streak running through it, which gets nicknamed a stitch. And the authorities in Whistling Wood decide that it's not a proper royal, because the diamond is impure, and they deny Victoria Stitch and Celestine their royalty. And Victoria Stitch is furious about this, because Victoria Stitch is a very angry, passionate character. And the story is about Victoria Stitch trying to get back what she believes should be hers. So I thought I would start by reading you a short extract from the book. A few moments later, Celestine found herself whizzing through the air after Victoria Stitch, keeping low in the shivering leaves to try and hide the golden sparks trailing from her buttercup. Her heart was racing faster than it ever had before, and her antennae glittered with daring. She hung back just far enough to not be noticed, watching in awe as her sister flew high up in the starry sky, her sheer sparkling cape billowing out and glowing pink in the light of the raspberry moon. Victoria Stitch flew for a long time, and after a while Celestine started to feel uncomfortable. The stalk of her bloom was digging into her thighs, but more worryingly, they seemed to have left the bright and populated parts of Whistling Wood behind and were flying towards the north, where it was darker and more desolate. Celestine had never been this far away from home before, and she didn't like the feeling of this place. It reeked of shadows and gloom, the trees dense and dark and rustling. She almost considered turning back, but something made her carry on. What if Victoria Stitch really was in danger? What if she needed her? Celestine shuddered and flew on, keeping her eyes on Victoria Stitch, who was flying high up in the sky amongst the multicoloured stars, pink, orange, blue and green, violet, periwinkle and gold. Just when Celestine thought they couldn't have got to a more dark and desolate and creepy part of the wood, Victoria Stitch slowed down and nosedived into the foliage. Celestine followed, flying slowly so that her bloom would emit as few sparks as possible, and alighting on a twiggy branch at the top of a tree nearby. Far below, snug between the trunks of the skinny trees, in a tiny mossy clearing, there was a fire, flickering both green and purple. By the fire was a girl with black and white hair and a funny sort of wagon on spoked wheels. And there was Victoria Stitch, walking towards the girl, waving and smiling most uncharacteristically, and then sitting down beside her. Celestine was shocked at how jealous she suddenly felt. Did Victoria Stitch have a friend? Who was this girl? It was unusual to see a whiskling living on her own so remotely. Celestine leant forward, trying to listen to what the girl was saying, but she was too far away. She didn't dare to get any closer in case Victoria Stitch saw her, and besides, she wasn't sure that she wanted to. Her throat felt tight, and her eyes were prickling. It was clear that Victoria Stitch wasn't in any danger, she just had a friend, That was all. A friend. Celestine slipped off the branch and back onto her bloom, turning her back on the tiny clearing. She rose into the starry sky, the eerie light of the pink moon shining bright on her pale blonde hair and reflecting off her cheeks, which were streaked with tears. So there you go. There is an extract from Victoria's Stitch, Bad and Glittering. And now I thought I would just tell you a little bit about how I created the character of Victoria Stitch. So Victoria Stitch is very special to me. She's actually my favourite character I've ever created, and I created her about 14 years ago when I was on my art foundation course. When I first created her, she was not exactly Victoria Stitch the Whiskling that she is now. She started as a very naughty, fairy-like character, and she had pink hair, and I wrote a couple of books about her, and she was very mischievous, and she always wanted to be queen. And she was a very angry character back then. Her personality has never changed. As I got older, Victoria Stitch developed, and she went through various incarnations until she finally reached her incarnation as a Whiskling. Now, Whisklings I created about 7 years ago, I think, and they came about in a bit of a roundabout way. So when I was younger, I always loved having a little character to take around with me, take on adventures, make tiny clothes for and accessories, and I used to call it a mascot. And I was inspired to do that by a book called The Suitcase Kit by Jacqueline Wilson that I read when I was 8. And ever since then I've always had a little mascot character. And when I was little I used to use the Sylvanian Family or something as my little mascot. But when I got older, maybe I was 23 or 24, I decided I wanted a mascot that was a creature that I had created. So I really wanted to create a species of my own tiny creature that I had invented. And so I created Whisklings. Now, Whisklings are tiny little characters who are no taller than 5 inches high. So here we have a cutout of Victoria Stitch, and this is how tall she would actually be. This is her life size. So she is 4.5 inches. And the characteristics of a Whiskling are antennae that can spark with their emotions, black-tipped noses, super long eyelashes, like really long, like whiskers, very pointed ears, and obviously they're miniature, and they are born from crystals, from the one crystal cave in Whiskling Wood. And they can, their birth crystal is made into their wand, and they can do magic with that. So birth crystal is very important to Whisklings. So I had created Whisklings and their whole world of Whiskling Wood, and I wanted to create my little mascot to be a Whiskling. So this was the very first little Whiskling I ever created, and she was called Celestine. Can I see her? There she is. And so this is actually how Celestine, the character in my book, was created. It was actually started, she started as a little model like this. And I used to take this character, Celestine, all around about with me and photograph her and take her on little adventures. And I just loved her so much, and I loved the whole idea of Whiskling Wood and where she'd come from, because I had a whole backstory for her, so much that I then also wanted to include Victoria Stitch, who I had already created about 7 years earlier, into Whiskling Wood. And so Victoria Stitch became a Whiskling too. So as you can see, my inspiration for the book came from lots of different places really, and it all all this inspiration gathered over time to finally create this book, Victoria's Stitch, Bad and Glittering. And I am just so happy that this book is being published. Whistling Wood is basically my utopia. I just put everything into it that I love. It's just my sort of dream world, the place that if I could live in a fantasy place, that is the kind of place I would like to live. And of course they are all miniature, because I have always been obsessed with miniatures. So whisklings live inside, a lot of them live inside trees, inside hollow trees, and they fly around on flowers, or surf around on leaves, and I just love spending time in their miniature world. I've always loved miniatures, and I thought actually I would just show you a few of my favourite miniatures to end the video. So when I first had my little mascot Celestine, I would collect up lots of tiny little things for her, and here are some of the things that I bought for her. So here is a teeny tiny little necklace, if you can see, and that was created by a miniature jewellery designer called Naladris, and it actually matches my necklace here. And that was actually when I decided that Celestine was going to become a jewellery designer. It was from seeing miniature necklaces at a miniatures fair. So again, as you can see, you can just take your inspiration from anywhere, really. And you never know what you're going to come across in life that might just spark an idea for you. Here is a tiny little bobble hat that I knitted. And I used very thin needles to create this bobble hat, and I imagine a whiskling could wear this tiny little bobble hat. And I've also got a silver and a gold one, because I think whisklings would wear silver and gold bobble hats. They seem the type of creatures that would. There we go. I love knitting tiny things, it's just very relaxing. This was Celestine's tiny jewellery box, and this was just a plain wood box, but I painted it and I stuck gems all over it, because obviously she loves gems and jewels. There's some of her jewels in there. And then here is a teeny tiny little mug. And I absolutely love this tiny mug because it's got eyelashes on it, and obviously whisklings have hugely long eyelashes, and so I thought this was the perfect whiskling mug, and that is from a shop called Pretty Little Minis. And then lastly, I just wanted to show you this because it is so cute. A tiny little Chanel perfume bottle with real perfume in it. How adorable is that? I just love it. Technically that is too big for an actual whiskling if you look at the sizes, but I still love it. So I'm very passionate about miniatures. In fact, the front cover of Bad and Glittering has got a picture of Victoria's Stitch on it, and this was actually a photograph. So I made a 3D paper doll of Victoria's Stitch, and I brought it here to show you. I changed her hairstyle afterwards, but here, oh, she's got a bit floppy now, but there it is. And I photographed that, and that is the actual model that is on, the actual dress that is on the front of the book. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video all about whisklings and miniatures and my new book, Victoria's Stitch, Bad and Glittering. And I can't wait until it comes out.